Hey, what's up you guys? So I was out for lunch with a friend the other day and he was asking me questions about investing. He didn't really have any experience with it and he didn't really know any of it, and just the term kind of seemed like a scary concept to him. Being the good friend that I am, I was happy to answer any questions that he had. And I thought that it would be helpful if I actually shared some of the points that I gave him to you guys. The truth is that there are a lot of people out there in the US right now, Gen Z or millennials, that aren't investing right now. And to me, that's kind of unfortunate because in your 20s, in your late teens, or even your 30s, these are really important years when it comes to saving up for retirement, and probably the most impactful, I would say. So in this video, I'm going to share some pretty common reasons as to why people choose not to invest, and then I'll give my own amateur opinion on whether or not these are good reasons to not invest. Now, before I continue with this video, I ask that you guys please take everything I say with a grain of salt. I obviously am only speaking from my experience and what I've learned. I know sometimes that the system may not be nice to us, especially those who may not have been as lucky when they were born, but I'm a strong believer in trying to do the things that are within our grasp of control. You know, you can't control who your parents are or how much money you're born into, but you can focus on accumulating as much knowledge as you can about personal finance, about money. So eventually that when you do have money, you will be able to manage it better. So a major reason as to why people generally do not invest right now, and this is the reason that my friend gave me, and he said that he was going to invest later when he had enough money, or when he had more money. And this isn't necessarily a great excuse for not investing, and I'm going to show you why through some hard numbers. So on my screen, I have a compound interest calculator here. What you do is you can put in your initial amount of money that you have, your contributions, rate of return or your interest rate, as well as the number of years that it would take to grow, or that you have to grow. So let's say you're 25 years old and you plan to retire at the age of 65. You want to be able to have probably about $1 million by the age of 65. Let's just say theoretically. If you were to contribute $200 per month at a rate of return of about 10%, which is just about the rate of return of the total stock market, and you had 40 years to grow, you would be able to have about $1.2 million. Now, what I'd like to focus on is the pie graph that you see in front of you. The total contributions that you put in over the span of the 40 years is $96,000, but the total interest that you've earned is $1.16 million. So as you can see, most of the money accrued was actually through interest, and the interest is a result of you just putting your money in the stock market and letting it accrue over time. So let's say you were my friend and wanted to invest later when he had a higher salary, or when, let's say you're 35 and you've never heard of investing until prior and now you want to get into it. Instead of having 40 years for your money to grow, you have 30. All else equal, you have 10 years less than a 25-year-old would. Your balance would be $450,000. as opposed to the 25-year-old who has 1.2. Now, the total contribution isn't that large of a difference compared to the 25-year-old. Remember, the 25-year-old put in 96K, the 35-year-old put in 72K. And the interest is still a majority of the money that's been accrued over time, but it's a lot less than the 25-year-old. Okay, so by now you might be thinking, all right, so time is obviously a big factor. What if I were to double my payments as a 35-year-old to make up for the amount of time lost because I didn't invest for the last 10 years? So let's try that out. So you still have 30 years of growth. You have a 10% rate of return, but instead of contributing $200, you contribute $400. So after 30 years, your total balance is $900K. Your total contribution is higher than it was as a 25-year-old or as a 35-year-old where you contribute $200 a month. And your total balance is higher than it would have been than if you were to contribute 200 per month at the age of 35. But even if you double your payments 10 years later, you still have a higher balance than if you were to start contributing 200 at the age of 25. So I hope this example shows that it's not necessarily about the amount of money that you put in each month, and it's more about how much time you put your money in the market for. So if you think that you maybe don't want to start investing now because retirement just isn't within your horizon, I highly suggest you reconsider this, because through this example, you saw that from the ages 25 to 35, that was actually the time when most of your money has compounded. Even if you were to double your payments monthly 10 years later, you just couldn't beat the power of compound interest. So if you're watching this and you're in your 30s, this isn't meant to shame you or discourage you from investing. If anything, it should be the opposite, and just know that the best time to invest was actually yesterday, but the next best time to invest is today. So please take advantage of the time you have left until you retire and just let your money grow through compound interest. You don't even need to have a lot of money, which is another common reason people choose not to invest. You just want to let your money grow for as long as possible. Another reason why people may not want to invest is because they do not currently have an emergency fund. Now, in my opinion, this is actually a very valid reason, valid excuse to not invest right now, because ideally you don't want to pull out of the stock market for at least 3 to 5 years. Money that you put in the stock market is probably something that you won't be able to use for a while. So in the meantime, you do want to have some sort of cash reserves in like a savings account or a checking account. A majority of Americans are still not able to cover a $1,000 emergency expense, whether it could be through medical or maybe your car broke down, something like that. And because you want your money in the stock market to accrue interest over time, you don't want to take money out of the stock market before you have to and end up paying taxes or any withdrawal fees that can come with it. So before you do invest in something like the stock market, I highly recommend starting up that emergency fund first. A good benchmark for how much money you should save is about 3 to 6 months if you want to be a little more risky, or maybe even 12 months of expenses if you want to be on the safer side. Not only for an emergency fund, but if you need money within the next 3 to 5 years, whether it's to, save up for a down payment of a car or a home, saving up for school tuition, maybe you want to start investing in a 401k or pay off any high interest debt beforehand. These are all valid reasons to not invest in the stock market at the moment. Another common reason as to why people don't want to invest or do not invest is because they feel like they need to be a financial expert to be involved. I'm here to tell you that that is not a good reason to not invest. I am by no means a financial expert, and I'm not a good trader. And if I'm able to just consume and absorb everything like a sponge from all of the finance content that's free on the internet, then you would be able to as well. Reality is there's just so much information out there on the internet now, and I feel like investing is so accessible because there used to be commission fees on every trade that you make. Now those don't exist. You can now purchase fractional shares of any stock. So if you wanted to buy from a company like Amazon, you don't have to worry that its stock price is over $3,000. You could just buy $100 worth. Now you might say that because there's so much info out there, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed, and I totally agree. But that's why I highly believe in a simple investing strategy. I follow the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. That means my investing strategy is just so easy that even a 5th grader would be able to understand it. When I invest, I will always allocate a certain amount of money from my paycheck to just go into my investment account every month, and then buy an index fund or buy an ETF with it. My brokerage, which is Fidelity, is automated to take a certain amount of money from my bank account so I can invest it automatically into whatever I want to invest in. I do this on the first of every month, and once I buy, I just forget about it basically. I'm not checking the balance of my portfolios every day. I probably check it like once every couple weeks or so just to see how we're doing, but I'm generally not very involved in the investing that I do anymore. I basically just let the market do its work. If you guys don't know which ETF or index fund to invest into, I would recommend VTI, which is Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund. Another reason why I hear people not wanting to invest is because they think that the stock market is overvalued, it's overpriced, we're at an all-time high right now. I'm gonna just wait until the stock market crashes. Now the truth is, despite there being so many experts and pundits telling you that the stock market is going to crash tomorrow or next month, no one actually knows when the stock market is going to crash, if at all. That means the stock market could crash tomorrow, it could crash in 10 days, it could crash in 5 years, like I don't know. And anyone who claims to be able to predict this stuff is either a liar or a time traveler. Now the thing is, the fact that the stock market is at an all-time high is not really a good enough reason for you to not invest. Because the truth is, the stock market hits all-time highs pretty often. Now if you look at VTI's performance over the past 20 years, you might realize that we're hitting all-time highs pretty often. Let's say you invest at around 2012. 2012, you probably hit an all-time high, and then you just keep hitting all-time highs pretty consistently until about 2015, when it finally stagnates a little, and then you just keep going on an all-time high. There's no reason trying to guess when the stock market will crash, because if you were to invest at 2015 and then just keep waiting until the market crashes, you probably won't even invest for a while, and then you're losing out on precious years where you could be gaining interest on the money that you put in. So if I were to give you guys some suggestions, it would be to not be scared of an all-time high, because we hit all-time highs basically all the time. And if there's anything that you guys learned from the early example, is that you don't want to waste any time not being in the market, because there's always potential for growth and always potential for returns. That is all for today's video. I know that this isn't by all means a conclusive list of reasons not to invest, but I hope I covered the most common ones at least. I hope this video was able to debunk some of the preconceptions you guys had about investing. If you couldn't tell by now, I'm a really big proponent of it, and just being able to invest consistently and early. And during your 20s, these are like the best times to invest, because the returns will really show by the time you're 65, and you will be in a much better position if you were to start at 25 than if you did at 35. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, take it easy and start investing.